Hello snowboarders of the internet, I am your host TC and today I will be reviewing the Yes Pick Your Line. You're going to have camber in between your feet with rocker on the nose and the tail. What that's going to do is that rocker is going to allow you to get in and out of turns nice and easy. Also going to help with float in that fresh pow. That camber is going to help with power, drive, and pop. This board comes in a 156, a 159, a 160 wide, a 162, a 164 wide, and a 165. I rode this board at Copper Mountain where it was a beautiful spring condition day. The only caveat to that was we got about 2 feet the day before. So pretty much with that 2 feet, they didn't open the top of the mountain and they did on the day I rode this guy. So pretty much fresh tracks up there all day. As the day went on, it definitely got to be that wet, super heavy snow, that like California snow, I'd say, where in the start of the day, it started off as that cream cheese and then ended up as those heavy wet taters. But it was still a great day, beautiful conditions where I could see everything. I didn't have to worry about any lighting or anything like that. And I used my Ride Fuse boots and Jones Mercury bindings. When we're talking overall flex on this board, it is coming in at stiffer than the middle of the road. However, it's not going to be like planky stiff or anything like that. Since you do have rocker on the nose and the tail, they do feel slightly softer, but I would still say it's going to be a nice fluid flex throughout, where I didn't really notice that in the nose or the tail, like it didn't stick out to me that much. Now, when you're torsionally flexing this thing, it does come in at the overall flex, I would say, where it'll require a little bit more effort, but it's not really going to be fighting you or throwing a bunch of resistance your way. Now, when that translates straight over into stability, it is going to be a stable board where when you're on those smooth groomers or anything like that, you can just haul ass, not have to worry about anything. When you do get into those giant wet push piles or anything like that, it does get bounced around a little bit, so just stay lower and you're gonna be just fine. Keep those knees bent and you're all good to go. Since it does have camber, it is gonna pop well. I wouldn't say it has that freestyle pop to it where it's gonna be super snappy or anything like that, but it just has a nice mellow pop where you load that tail up. Since there isn't any carbon in it, it's not too hard to load up. Just load it up, it's gonna spring you forward. You don't really have to do that super exaggerated motion or anything like that. Just simply load it up with your legs and it'll do the work for you. Now, when you're landing, it is nice and stable, even in fresh pow or that wet pow. It's gonna land nice and flat for you where it doesn't really wanna dig in. That taper in the board is also gonna help the nose pop up and that tail sinks. So it just helps a little bit. Even if you do land bolts on it, it's not gonna always wanna throw you forward. That being said, I wouldn't recommend landing bolts in powder, so just keep that in mind. Make sure you like, subscribe, click that bell, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of our scheduled programming we have coming out. Since this board does have rocker in the nose and the tail, it is pretty butterable. Especially on this nose, it is such a huge surface area to work with. When I was buttering on it, I didn't really have to like shift all my weight into it. I could just simply lean and it's gonna press for me. It does have a little bit of a spring on the nose here, so popping out isn't that big of an issue. Feel free to spin out if you want, if that's your sort of thing. Now, when you're buttering on the tail, it is very similar to the nose, just a little shorter, so that sweet spot kind of just gets pushed in more towards that back foot, I would say. But it's still gonna have that same flex to it, so when you are pressing into this board, just expect that same amount of return that you get from the nose. Carving on this board felt pretty relaxing, actually, where it was easy to get edge to edge on this thing, especially on those short, quick carves. I had no problems there. On the medium carves, it felt nice and smooth, just pretty much nice and cruisy, I would say. On those larger carves, as long as the run was smooth, it was good. But on those more chewed up, bumpy runs that they didn't groom, it definitely was getting bounced around a little bit, so I had to stay lower on it. But overall, it still is that nice rad dad cruisy carver, I would say. And it will Euro carve for you, so you don't have to worry about it. Just keep that weight centered on it, get nice and low, keep those knees bent, you'll be all good to go. Rider in mind, they're not going to be the most skilled person out there, but they're definitely not going to be that beginner. I would definitely say this board is made for that rad dad rider where they're just out there cruising with the kids, looking for little side hits to pop off of, that sort of thing. They're not getting too wild or too extreme out there, but they're just out there to have a good time and just keep it nice and mellow. If you're looking to get more involved, head on over to Angry Snowboarder VIP. What is it, you ask? Sure, I could tell you here, but we have a great video over there getting into it really in depth. I like this board, but I think there's too much overlap with the Uninc version of it, where I don't really think it's necessary in the line. Like, it comes up just short of what everything that board does, so I'm just kind of struggling to find out why it's pretty much in their line. Overall, it's still a good board. I think it's overshadowed by that one, so I would keep that in mind. If you think you have the skill and everything, I would probably pick up the Uninc version over this one. So yeah. Comparable boards, the Salomon Super 8, the Nidecker Alpha, and the K2 Passport. Recommended bindings, the Select Kowalchuk, the Union Force, and the K2 Edition. This has been my review for the Yes Pick Your line. If this does sound like the board for you, but you just need a binding to pair with it, why don't you go check out one of the reviews for the recommended bindings.